Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deeper, let's start the show.
Welcome to Ramblings of a Busy Mind, and my guest today is a dear friend that I've known. I don't know, Tabitha, how long do we know each other?
Oh my.
A year, 2 years?
I think it's been a couple years now.
It's like I think it's forever. So it's Tabitha Irving, who is actually a client of mine. We met in a mentor guide client relationship, and you came recommended through Tanya Levy, which was my first guest. And Tabitha, can you share a little bit about your story, why you came to see me?
So I had kind of residual struggles from PTSD. I had been through a lot of therapies and had reached a certain point and started to plateau and stagnate in my recovery. And I started to reach out for less traditional ways and more complementive aspects of medicine. And it's actually kind of, I say the universe put me in the right place at the right time. I had got to a point where I was going back to school, which brought Tanya into my world, and she was a really good mentor, and I still love her to pieces. And then she kind of threw me in a couple other directions, one in particular, Natasha's, which became a very profound treatment for me, and taught me a lot about myself and a lot about my triggers and a lot about how I recover. And yeah, and Natasha and I have continued to have sometimes deep and sometimes silly conversations since we got to meet each other.
Yeah, we did sound. I'm still struggling with what I name it. So right now the name is Sound Float since yesterday, but basically it's sound in a zero gravity chair, and the similarities that I see between my brain with the burnout and you with the PTSD is the overwhelm, is the not knowing where to go, the brain that doesn't stop talking, and you are pulled in all directions, and at the same time you're isolated.
100%. It's like it's a lack of control. I like to describe it as I feel like at times when it starts to get the better side of me, it's kind of like you're driving down the road at 150 miles an hour and trying to get out of the car. You can't, it's just not physically possible. And you need to slow down, you need to process, and you need to do things safely. And I kind of feel like that's where it gets to when things start to get ahead.
Yeah. And coming from our discussions that we had, you are a former paramedic.
Yes.
And one of the topics that we talked about was the stigma that's there with the heroes that have to be strong and hold on and cannot be vulnerable in your field with PTSD and burnout.
100%. Like when I first knew that things weren't right, for me, it wasn't that I felt I had a mental health struggle or a mental health diagnosis. For me, it was I wasn't performing to the level that I had held myself to for 20 years. And I was like, what's wrong? At first I thought there had to be a medical reason. I went through all the blood work and the diagnostics and something must be wrong. There's even a point, as silly as it sounds, that I tried to convince my healthcare providers I must have Alzheimer's because there's no way that my brain could be this disarray without there being an actual medical explanation. So then when I finally accepted that maybe I needed to talk, I went and I've recently started to share this with people because until recently it was kind of a place of embarrassment. I don't know that that's the word, maybe shame. Um, but I like to share it because I want people to kind of grow from it and maybe not make the same mistakes I did. But for the first 3 months of even seeking psychiatric help, I hid it from everybody. I even hid it from my family. I was driving the whole way to Halifax so that nobody ever seen me going in an office. I had excuses for other appointments so my family didn't question where I was going or why I was going. Um, but yeah, I was scared to be broken. I was scared that it was gonna come with a lot of judgment and a lot of criticism even.
Do you see that judgment coming towards you, like, or towards others, like now? Because I know you guys. I know that the first responders have a meeting which is coming up pretty soon here in Nova Scotia, and that's going on 10 years, the 11th year, I think, this year, where you
I
have a
think
peer support getting together. So the stories that are told and shared between you in the community, is it the same story? Is it the same path that everybody struggles with first? And how do we get to you to know that it's okay to get out there?
yeah, so it's funny. I'm gonna put a plug in there for John Garth McDonald. It's Helping the Helpers. And it happens in October. I do believe it's somewhere around October 24th. And having spoke at that conference last year and listening to everybody else's stories, something I didn't know because we were not having those conversations was I said later the evening talking with other presenters, I said, and I kind of giggled about it a little bit. The funny part of what I got out of it, not all that I got out of it, but one of the funny things I got out of it was, my struggle wasn't so special after all because we were all, no matter whether from police officers to corrections officers to firefighters to myself as a paramedic and then other paramedics, it we were all struggling in similar ways and we were all had the same stigma. There was even an Ontario police officer that spoke there that literally our initial trigger had began very early in our career and they were so similar it was eerie because for me as a student, a preceptor who was um somebody I looked to as a hero, a mentor, even to this day, if something happened to me or to my family member, he's the kind of medic I wanted there. And he said to me, we had done my very first traumatic arrest, which is a pretty big deal. Like a traumatic arrest is a lot to take in. And um, unfortunately, it was a situation where we weren't even able to work anything. And we packed up and we went back to our post. And while we were sitting at our post, it kind of hit me and I started to cry. And he looked at me and he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "That was a lot." And he said, "Do you think we could have saved him?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. We made the right call." And he said, "Well, then you need to get yourself together. We've got other calls to do." And that was key. And unfortunately, that's a really common issue, not just in the paramedic world, which I thought it was unique to us, but lo and behold, it's not. Um, but that set the precedence for my career. It was 19 years and 11 months before I ever shed a tear on the job again. And the unfortunate part was once I shed a tear, I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't process it. And it brought a lot of feelings of failure along with it because I had failed at keeping my composure. I had failed at being the strong um, paramedic with the thick skin and
No emotion.
heroic aura around me, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a struggle we're all having.
If you look back, the things that you've done to overcome that, what could have been prevented if it would have happened? Like if you as a student would have had the possibility to already have measures in place to not fall that deep.
Wow, that's a big one, Natasha. Like you and I have talked a lot about that aspect of preventative measures. And unfortunately, there's such a critical load of people struggling that they're not getting to the point that they're looking at prevention. Personally, for myself, I wish I'd had that person in those conversations. And I don't think the conversation can happen once. I think it needs to happen continuously during these individuals' education and training. I wish I'd had those people like myself who had come and shared their experience, um, shared what they would have done differently to keep themselves healthy. Um, and and I I really would have liked to have seen it talked about more. I would have liked to have seen people comfortable and open to talk about the fact that there's hard parts of the job that you're just going to need support and you're going to need to reach out and you're going to need to talk. Um, Self checks, like I'm a huge advocate of we're in charge of our own recovery. We have to advocate for ourselves. We have to want it for ourselves. Um, and we have to be willing to step up for ourselves. And I think self checks is a big one. It's one I've talked about several times. How hard is it to send out an email where somebody runs through a quick Google Doc questionnaire that has, 10, 20 questions, and it sends them back results of like, you know, just a description of where they lie at that point. Um, the stigma, we just got to stop the stigma. It's one of the recent things that I've been processing, is the feeling of being thrown away, the feeling of that the day I left that job, unable to do that job, I no longer mattered.
Mm.
I lost my value. Um, and in losing that value, I feel like I lost the part of me that was a paramedic. And now I kind of have decided that no, I'm sorry, you can't take that away from me. I gave and I sacrificed a lot during that portion of my life and that career. I was proud. Um, I am proud of that part of my life, and I did a lot of good things. Um, and just because I don't do it anymore doesn't mean that they get to take get to take that away from me. I don't, I try to think from a positive place, and I feel like those lack of people being able to look me in the face that I used to work with, the people that kind of turn the other way when they see you coming, I like to believe it's just because we're in that place where people don't know what to say. It's kind of like when you go to a funeral, right? What the heck do I see? Sorry for your loss. It gets old, right? Like you get tired of hearing that. And I think we're because we understand the that process of the wrong words or hearing the same words over and over, we don't know how to have the conversations. So I've kind of found my bold personality again, and I've actually recently been forcing myself and forcing medics that are still on duty into conversation. I don't avoid them and I don't let them avoid me. I make like I will like I was at work yesterday and validate that I'm not somebody they need to run from. I'm not contagious. Um, and I have a lot of good advice to offer, honestly. So like, yeah, I've kind of that's what I've been doing lately is giving people the benefit of the doubt is they don't know how to approach me or they don't know what I want to talk about. So I approach them.
I'm I'm wondering how many of those are struggling themselves and not able to speak about it. And
That's
then
a
instead of reaching out and saying, here
yeah.
you have the story. How did you cope? What can we do? It's almost like a, what do you say, a denial. So
Yeah.
that they're denying themselves basically the knowledge that yes, I struggle and yes, there's help, and instead of going for help and finding the people who lived it, um then diving deeper and deeper into the pit hole of despair, basically.
Well, it's like anything really, Natasha. Nobody wants to look in the mirror when you get scars, right?
Mhm.
So the fear of it hitting a chord or the fear of seeing themselves and you knowing what you are. I know I did it myself early in my recovery. I was very triggered by other people that I knew shared the same diagnosis. Um, it also took me a long time before I would admit my diagnosis, and I was in complete denial and refused to accept it. Um, but yeah, I had a hard time in the beginning looking at so I think that's a very fair assessment because um you fear I like I'll never I've there was a time not very long ago actually that I would have told you I'll 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 be 100% again. But I've recently learned nobody's ever 100%. We're always working on something. We're always growing and trying to find what we need to move forward in life to be that little bit better. Um, how I tackle those things that need improvement or those things that are, I hate the word, but trigger me, um, is different. It's very different. And and I think that's I kind of lost my train of thought, Natasha, but
Okay.
um
The
yeah,
thing,
I think
the thing,
that's
the fun in that is being triggered, and I have that too. I fall back into old patterns because something happens and I'm overwhelmed, and usually it's me putting myself in that.
mhm,
I admit that freely. But I get out of it faster and I recognize faster. And for me, it's almost like the challenge comes up again to test how far you've come and to see how resilient you are now and what else you gotta finagle so you get out of it. The
yeah,
part being is it completely gone, then you have no growth anymore. Because then you're stagnating.
exactly.
And that's and the choose love movement has the nice thing, they don't use PTSD, they use PTG, post traumatic growth. They
Traumatic
changed the
growth.
label, and with that, when you change, like, you are in PTG instead of PTSD, you're not a victim anymore. You're a survivor. You're growing out of whatever has happened to you, and you are in charge, right? So you're completely empowered with changing that label. Maybe we have to change the label from the diagnosis of PTSD to I am PTG. You can choose that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you say, it's funny because I do every so often I get those moments of something coming up and I will reflect on wow, like I didn't fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't isolate. I didn't cry in bed for days. I just took a deep breath, took a few minutes, and I dealt with it. Like, so yeah, absolutely. When those things come up that used to set me on a whirlwind, and I can, it's a very humbling and rewarding, validating all of the hard work I did, and gives me the ability and the strength to keep going forward and keep improving on all those coping mechanisms, and definitely makes a big difference in how things go.
I think as soon as you start changing the narrative or changing the perspective, the labeling, any kind of that, as soon as you change it into, oh, it's a lesson, or it's something that, yes, I come through stronger, then you're not bound by that fight or flight reaction of, oh God, I'm back in that situation and I cannot move and I'm like the deer in the headlights, right? Because if you switch the narrative, you have way more opportunities to cope with.
100%. Yeah. It just it just gives you such a perspective of, I don't even know how to put it into words. Yeah, it definitely, it changes how you look at everything, really. Like, you just start to be able to see things as opportunity. Even it changes how you see the people around you, like, because you start to give people opportunity to show you their true self, and you start to reach out and have empathy and compassion for people, because you understand where some of those things come from sometimes.
When you started to be in PTSD, or yeah, when you went, how to say it? I don't want to use labels that I don't like.
When life started to become more than I could handle.
Let's say this way, when you were in overwhelm, how much did you realize how much you being in your state of mind and with your emotional lens, how much that influence your connections and reactions with other people?
Oh, ridiculously. Like, I was 110% an extrovert. I loved people. I loved to talk. I loved to be with people. I'm I say I have my grandfather's gift to gab, because I used to remember hate going places with him because it would take 10 times longer than it should. Well, now my kids complain of the same thing when they go places with me. Um, but I completely withdrew. I did nothing outside of what I absolutely had to do in life, and I talked to nobody outside of who I absolutely had to. I cut everybody off. To this day, I unfortunately have lost a lot of people in my life because I had pushed them out, and I had cut them out because I didn't have space or energy for them. um how my husband stayed with me, I don't know, because I tried really hard to push him away too. um my kids, unfortunately, they're stuck with me for life, but I I definitely left some scars of neglect and being unavailable emotionally for them for a period of time.
Mhm.
Thankfully, the good thing about healing is when you heal your children with you. Um, and there's always space to fix all of those connections and um, scars.
Maybe not fix them, but let them grow anew.
Change where they go. Yeah,
Yeah,
change where
yeah,
that develops.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you tried quite a few different modalities to help yourself.
I
How,
did.
want to share some about them, or how that was for you? And
Yeah, so I have a crazy list. I always I I joke that I refused to be a victim um of my diagnosis, and thankfully that stubbornness drew me out. And I started with I started with I went through, I think, I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 different therapists before I finally found my psychologist. Um, and she is the most beautiful human ever. She has been great. I still see her on a regular basis. That helped, and thankfully she is a very open-minded individual, and she pushed me, or suggested, I shouldn't say push, she suggested that I reach out to other modalities. So that kind of encouraged me and drove me in the right direction. Um, I eventually got into OT, me in between starting talk therapy with a psychologist and OT. I tried a few things like yoga, um, uh, group talk sessions. I don't, and I think it's funny how you evolve and how what one of the things I've noticed is something that so early on when I tried those group talk therapies, it I was like devastated that somebody wanted me to talk about my struggles in front of other people. Like, are you crazy? Show them I'm weak? Never. And now I would go into one of those and you'd probably have to give me like have a talking stick to shut me up, because I want everybody to hear that they can get better, that there is things out there. So there was a lot of things at that point that I kind of tried and didn't work for me in that moment, because I wasn't at a point where it was the right thing. Then when I tried OT and I couldn't, and I literally would, God love her, thank God my OT has thick skin, because I would argue with her and I'd be like, she would give me things I needed to do. And I would be like, no, 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 I can't. I can't do that. You don't understand. I really can't. And I had this just fix me mentality at that point too of, you know, just fix me so I'm good enough, patch me up, get the duct tape, and I'll go back to work. And then finally, I had a really bad spell where honestly I wanted my life to end. Like I had gave up. And somebody mentioned float therapy. And I was like, well, I've kind of always had a little fascination with the Dead Sea, and I really had the frigate and might as well mentality at that point. And I started floating. And that was a pivotal turning point for me, because where floating is the big thing about it is it's sensory deprivation. And I had that uh, that opportunity with that sensory deprivation to either battle or shut down my demons. Some of them I had to battle, some of them I shut down. But eventually with every float it got better, and with every float I was able to quiet the voices in my head a little bit better. And when those voices got quieted, I was able to start to participate in my occupational therapy and my talk therapy better, because I had better control of the processes going on in my head. I could process what they were telling me. I could think through doing what they wanted me to do. So I worked really hard. I floated a lot initially, and then that gave me the ability to kind of also look for what else was going to be complementive and really help me out. I tried things like I call it German acupuncture, but it's ocular. All the acupuncture is done in your ears.
Auricular, yeah.
I've I've used that for several things in my life. That helped to a degree. That also helped calm my nervous system. Um, oh my Lord. And then I tried energy healing, from Reiki to um, sorry, there's so many things. So then I went through and then I participated in a medical trial for psilocybin therapy, psychedelic therapy. That was a huge, huge thing for me. That was the light switch that gave me a lot of strength, but it also left me with a lot of work to do because it was such a huge switch in from fight or flight to normal, quiet, that I didn't know how to deal with the quiet. It was like I just got rid of all my friends. Like all the voices in my head that kept me on task and pushed me and motivated me and drove all of my choices in life were gone. And now I was alone. I had nobody to answer to, basically, is what it felt like. So I really couldn't find motivation to function at that point. I was too chill. Um, so I had to learn how to function after that again too. And about that time when I was struggling with that a little bit and kind of feeling like it doesn't seem to matter how much money or how many things I try, um, I can't seem to find a good balance. That's when I started to find things like I met Tanya, and Tanya introduced me into like a more energetic meditative state of connecting with myself. And then she introduced me to you, where we started. I'm sorry, what did you say you were calling it again?
Sound float.
Flow sound. I just say sound therapy, and I try to like. I get so excited when I go to talk to people and about it, and I'm like, you just gotta ask Natasha. She'll tell you all the
Well,
ins and outs.
the title came because I'm like trying to put it on my website, and basically it's you're floating on sound because you're in a zero gravity chair and you have sound underneath you and sound on top of you. So
Yeah.
you're floating in sound. And then we
So
talk or
this.
not, depending on what you want to do, right?
Yeah, and the sound therapy was huge. I really did a lot of, I call it cleaning up a lot of residual things that I had still um, holding me back. And I had always known that most of my triggers are auditory, um, and didn't really know why or how to deal with that. And though sound therapy has benefits for everybody, I feel like it had such an impactful change for me because of the fact it was um, engaging my auditory aspect of my senses. Um, and, I just have just kept moving forward. And um, anytime I start to feel like things are falling, I start reaching out to all my people, Natasha being probably one of the most prominent ones. And we start figuring out what's holding on. But that's the difference is once upon a time I just fell apart when something didn't feel right. And now it's like, okay, this isn't working. What, where can I find the little bugger that's got a hold of me right now? And if I can't work it out myself, that's when I start reaching out to my people, such as Natasha, and eventually we figure it out. It doesn't control me anymore. I drive this ship now. So,
I don't know how it was for you, but for me, with the sound, what happened was all of a sudden I was able to not having to think. The thoughts would come in, but they were not important. They could just flow through basically. And once in a while, you might grab one or you just let it go. Um, but for the most part, nothing was expected. Nothing had to be done. I could just be me.
yeah, yeah. I think that was, yeah, definitely that it was definitely a big part of me being able to let things go. I know that because that's always been hard for me. For whatever reason, I carry the responsibility of the world on my shoulders, and learning to let that go and only be able to control what's within my control. Um, definitely that was something that you and I worked on quite a bit, for sure.
So having come to where you are now, having gone through all those trials and challenges and whatever, what's the future?
Well, um, I honestly, I try not to rush things, and um, I try to trust the universe, um, and let it give me what it thinks I'm ready for, and what it thinks the world's ready for from me. And right now I'm in nursing school. Believe it or not, I've reached a point of healing and wellness that I can go back into medicine. It's going to look a little different, um, but I still am very proud of the fact that I have gotten to that point. Um, I have a huge desire to talk more, um, which I giggle at myself because I hid my diagnosis so strongly. Um, and I I never want to tell anybody anything personal. Um, but I just think it needs to be said. I think it needs to be heard. I know when I was at my worst, I needed to know somebody could get better. I needed to know that I was allowed to reach out and try all these things. I needed to hear those things. And I needed to know my struggle wasn't as unique as I thought. So I do have a big drive. I'm trying to let it happen organically, but I do want to speak more. I'd like to speak more regularly. I'd like to speak in to people that are going into those fields, um, as a precautionary tale. And who knows, maybe even in my career as nursing, I'll aim more towards being a part of preventative medicine.
An advocate for you're not alone.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I know that one of the big parts, and that's again, I have my revelations too when I work with people, when I start trying to explain what I do, and that's what I realized. I wished I would have had somebody when I was in burnout that would have said, "Here, this is what happens with you. These are the choices you have. This is what you can do." Or pay attention to what happens to you because you have all the signs there that you know what's happening, or you instinctively should know what's happening, um to not follow that deep. And that's what I hope to, with the podcast, I hope to tell people there is other people who lived it, there's other people who've been through it, and there's people you can talk to and that you can reach out and that might point you in the right direction. But first and foremost, it's not a stigmata. It's not, you don't have to be shut down and shut away just because you have a diagnosis. It doesn't matter. You are still a valuable person.
hmm
And if others don't understand it, they're not there for you. They don't resonate with you, because somebody who will resonate with you will never ever shame or blame you for what you're going through. They will just be
yeah.
there.
And I think that stigma is there, and I think that's kind of one of the big things is kind of like when we don't know or understand a disease and how we kind of treat it like a plague. I think that's kind of where we are with people with those diagnoses,
Mm.
is we kind of treat them like it's a plague instead of, giving them the hug they need or the support they need or the words of comfort or
And sometimes it doesn't need a word, it just needs a hug or the hand on the shoulder.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
being like basically showing that you're there, that you see them, that you hear them, and they can be that the way they are. Right.
100%.
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
anybody would like to, I don't want to overflow your Facebook or whatever, but if
never.
anybody were to say, I have I have the need to talk to the Tabitha, we will share your information where you can be reached.
Absolutely.
And hopefully it will be the input that some people need to step out of their box and realize they're not bound to that box, that they can get out of it, and that there's help, and that there's other people who have lived it and have survived it.
100%. We got to keep talking about it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being my guest today, and
thank you.
Can't wait what we talk about the next time, because I'm pretty sure I will see you again one of those days, maybe next year, in here to see where you've gone to. So thank you, and see you soon.
Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Ideas fade, others shine. Oh, welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deep, let's start the show. Questions, answers, here they